Apple will use 100% recycled cobalt in batteries by 2025. I find this section on the elimination of plastic from their packaging interesting as well. The development of fiber alternatives for packaging components like screen films, wraps, and foam cushioning has kept Apple on track toward this ambitious goal. To address the remaining 4% plastic in the company's packaging footprint, Apple is innovating to replace labels, lamination, and other small uses. In the last year, Apple developed a custom printer to introduce digital printing directly onto the boxes of iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Pro, eliminating the need for most labels. And a new overprint varnish found in iPad Air, iPad Pro, and Apple Watch Series 8 packaging replaces the polypropylene plastic lamination found on boxes and packaging components.
Most people don't realize how much machinery Apple creates for their vendors to use.
Indeed. I would love to see all the specialized equipment they've designed.
I would like them to publish the designs and allow others to use these machines, materials, and tech. It's not really an improvement until the tech is available to all product producers.
It's not really an improvement until the tech is available to all product producers. Sorry, that's not true at all. When they ship a couple 100 million phones a year, it's an impactful improvement, regardless of where else the tech goes. Having said that, don't you think these recycling contractors are using that knowledge for other customers? Is it really that hard to say that it's great that such a large vendor is working so hard at these goals? Good on them. There are plenty of things to criticize about Apple, but these changes represent real corporate goals and serious investment.
It's empty virtue signaling if they retain some patent or otherwise contractually obligate their vendors to not share the technology. Apple sells a lot of kit for a tech company, but it is a drop in the bucket of the broader economy, even 100 million phones. They did their part in a way that 99% of other companies won't be able to.
It's empty virtue signaling if they retain some patent or otherwise contractually obligate their vendors to not share the technology. They've reduced waste more than most users on this site, including you and me, combined. But that's empty virtue signaling because they didn't hand their competitors a silver spoon. That term really has lost all meaning.
They've not reduced waste. They're just producing less waste than they were before. Meanwhile, the drop in the bucket they've reduced can't be repeated elsewhere across not only their industry but others, so it is a relatively unremarkable change.
Is your point to criticize Apple for doing their part, because they aren't also doing the work for other companies not doing their part? How is that Apple's responsibility? The blame for other companies not doing their part is on the other companies. Society won't get anywhere if they blame bad things on the only companies doing things to correct the bad things.
Sounds like Apple's previous work with printers has come in handy again.
This is rather brilliant as an announcement. Cobalt is the most conflict-associated of the battery inputs. Thus, R&D has pushed cobalt content lower and lower over the years. The net result is old batteries contain tons more cobalt by weight than these new batteries Apple is expecting to use in 2025. Of course, I feel remiss not to point out how Apple is the party responsible for killing the user-replaceable battery.
User-replaceable batteries create a waste stream of used batteries. I wonder what the recycling rate of those used batteries is, compared to the recycling rate of iPhones and their embedded batteries. Gut feel here says way lower. If true, killing the user-replaceable battery might be a net win for reducing consumption of problematic materials.
My gut says it's higher since I would expect people who care about replacing batteries also care about recycling the old ones. Why do you think it's way lower?
The example I'm thinking of is when I sat next to someone in an airport who had just bought some garbage tier Samsung-compatible replacement battery from the duty-free shop for his garbage tier phone. He popped in the new battery and tossed the old one in the trash. Meanwhile, I know loads of people who have traded in, or simply handed in, their old iPhones in an Apple store. I can't imagine anyone casually tossing an old iPhone in the trash, the way my feckless bench neighbor did.
This is a problem I have with the right to repair movement. What happens to the replaced part? This is hard to police within regulated businesses. But just look at the landfills and scrapyards from the times when more items were more easily user-serviceable. It's not pretty. I'm all for enforcing user serviceability. However, it has the potential to be a backwards step for the environment if stern statutes are not put in place and actively policed. with the onus being on the party performing the replacement.
What's 100% recycled cobalt? The cobalt is either recycled, 100%, or it's not, 0%. How much of this 100% recycled cobalt makes up a single battery? Is it 10%? 1%? 99%? Is the battery 10% made of 100% recycled cobalt and 90% made of non-recycled material? I hate this 100% recycled wordplay. Any reasonable person would interpret it to mean the batteries are 100% recycled, which seems to not be the case, given how sly they are being with the description. Still, kudos to the recycling effort, but don't try to trick me. It's the same trick nearly every company in the US plays with, made from 100% reclaimed ocean plastic. Sure, it is made from plastic that 100% was reclaimed from the ocean. But if that plastic only makes up 1% of the item, and the rest is 99% non-recycled plastic, then you're effectively just tricking any individual not paying attention.
More greenwashing garbage from Apple, a company that has been building devices with notoriously and deliberately poor repairability for years, and more recently, has been taking a giant shit on first sale doctrine by refusing to provide any way for the new legal owners of decommissioned corporate hardware to delist said hardware from MDM, or device management, leading to entire laptops becoming soft-bricked e-waste well before the end of their reasonable lifespan.
From what I've read, Apple can and has worked with third parties to unlock MDM-associated and activation-locked devices, but only after a certain period of time and reasonable proof of legitimate ownership, to try to avoid creating a pipeline to legitimize stolen hardware, which doesn't seem particularly unreasonable. There's no point in having a locking feature if they'll roll over and unlock it for just anybody.
Maybe stop making a throwaway phone first if you're actually interested in being green.
My previous iPhone 8 lasted from 2016 to 2023. The only reason I stopped using it was because I accidentally broke the screen and the touch panel under it. It still received new iOS versions and updates. What exactly is throwaway about that, when compared to the hundreds of variants Samsung and others produce, with a 2-year lifespan, and then no updates after?
They deliberately make it hard to repair so you buy a new one, and have been caught multiple times slowing phones down and saying it's to save battery life, which could easily be fixed by allowing a removable battery. I guarantee your battery was shot by that point. I never mentioned Samsung, so that's just a useless strawman argument you're making. Also, Samsung has a rugged phone that still lets you take the back off and replace the battery. Where's Apple's version?
It's not a useless straw man argument. iPhones typically have a longer life cycle than Android phones. That is a fact. User-replaceable batteries lower the quality and aesthetics of the phone. So there's no benefit to having a better replaceable easily. Just take it to an Apple store.
The slowing down was necessary to not overload the batteries. Very obviously necessary since phones were resetting otherwise. And Apple offered replacement batteries almost at cost. What more do you want?
Apple did not communicate to users they were slowing down the phone to prevent issues. They did it silently, so users would upgrade, rather than replace the battery. Apple offered replacement batteries almost at cost, only after they were caught slowing down phones without informing users.
Throwaway may be hyperbole, but the average lifespan in terms of iOS versions for an iPhone is about 5-6 years. On the low side, someone who bought an iPhone Southeast in September 2018 only got 4 years. The issue is that the hardware often works fine for 10 years or more. Nowadays it's usually software that makes devices obsolete without any real necessity.
Not to be pedantic, but the iPhone 8 came out in late 2017. Still a good lifespan.
To offset that, I'm still using an iPhone 7. I'm stuck on iOS 15, but that doesn't matter to me.
I understand why it wasn't feasible before with the rate of progress, but now it should be possible. I want to see a LTS type of phone. Something like 10 years. Any other appliance, car, power tool, etc. have much longer useful lives. iPhones are LTS devices. My 8 Plus is still going strong and fully supported after nearly 6 years, with 1 battery replacement.
Who replaced the battery? Name a brand that's better in providing software updates and security patches for their fleet of phones. Repairability is a fair complaint, but the initial lifespan of Android is max 2 years. I consider it broken once it does not receive security updates. So Android phone is broken after 2 years.
With 70% of revenues from 100 million battery-powered devices, a year is a big deal.
Well, is it? I'd naively imagine Cobalt content is proportional to battery size. And while Apple sells a lot of devices, they aren't large energy-hungry ones. Surely far more of the world's battery production, by watt-hours or kg take your pick, goes into cars and grid storage than iPhones.
I think the title should say, Apple will order from 2025 only batteries with 100% recycled cobalt. I'm not aware that Apple has noteworthy production facilities, other than Eden, Dell, Lenovo, TSMC, Intel, Samsung. With Samsung as exception, which produces literally everything.
Well, title doesn't say make, says use. Then again, if we're to talk about hypocrisy, the cobalt impact on environment, not to mention child, including slave labor, is downplayed towards token green PR. And recycled cobalt can just be any previous cycle's new cobalt, meaning still driving cobalt mining forever? It's just an accounting trick to make it appear less impactful. Except if they promise to only use cobalt mined before 2025 in perpetuity.
How is it an accounting trick? Are you saying there would be no change in the amount of cobalt mined annually if Apple instead said they would use only newly mined cobalt?
Let's say the world currently uses 90% virgin cobalt and 10% recycled cobalt. Let's assume Apple decides to only use recycled cobalt. Q1. Is there any change to the amount of recycled cobalt? Q2. Is Apple a kind, environmentally friendly, generous, caring corporation? Q3. If Apple decided to use batteries without cobalt, would that decrease cobalt mining? Q4. Could Apple reduce the number of phones they produce, decreasing cobalt usage? And would Apple do that for environmental reasons? Q5. Let's assume their new policy actually makes zero difference to the amount of cobalt mining. Would Apple still claim to be environmentally conscious in their marketing?
Next thing Apple needs to do is set up MagSafe batteries to act as the primary battery for iPhones. Right now, using a MagSafe battery charges the built-in battery, which is then drained by iPhone usage. Ideally, what would happen instead is iPhone usage would use the MagSafe battery first, then the built-in battery. The result of this is that MagSafe batteries effectively are equivalent as replaceable ones.
I don't think the current setup is notably different from what you're proposing. The phone does use the MagSafe battery first. It just uses it through the internal battery. But that is just a matter of semantics. It shouldn't have a notable impact on battery health.
MagSafe wastes energy due to its inefficiency. It's hard to believe Apple's eco-friendly aspirations when they introduce such features. People want wireless charging that isn't changing. MagSafe is a more efficient version of that, compared to basic Qi charging like every other device offers, because the magnets ensure perfect alignment. People want a lot of things. I doubt that Apple would have lost significant market share for not providing wireless charging.
I'm confused. Isn't that what happens? Some portion goes to operating the phone and the rest to charging the battery. How does it work differently? It doesn't hook into the same charging system the phone uses for normal. Is that special for MagSafe? I don't really understand how it's different and can't find anything online to read more about this.
Lithium car battery weighs 450 kilograms. It has about 11 kilograms of lithium, 14 kilograms of cobalt, 27 kilograms of nickel, more than 40 kilograms of copper, and 50 kilograms of graphite, as well as about 181 kilograms of steel, aluminum, and plastics.
LFP batteries are becoming much more common in EVs, mostly due to lower cost. They are a bit lower performance than NMC and NCA cells, but cheaper. And they don't use cobalt. Edit. For example, Tesla Model 3 standard range uses LFP chemistry.
Flagged.
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 Realistically, what would Apple have to do here to satisfy you? Reply.